Hello, my dears. My name is Mariana, and welcome to my channel. So I was thinking a lot about what I wanted to share with you this week, and I realized we're heading into the holidays. It's a time of community and coming together safely, not too close together, and people have expressed some interest in my spiritual journey and like the story of my grandfather's books, and I thought, let's talk about that. Let's kind of get into it and get a little personal. I'm a little nervous, but a little excited. So today I'm going to share with you my spiritual journey. So I was raised Catholic, and we were not a very devout household. We went to church, Christmas, Easter, a few times in between, and I was going to take the Sacramento Confirmation. I was going to be confirmed. And for those of you who don't know, when you're confirmed as a Catholic, it happens when you're a young adult, an adolescent, and it basically is the moment where you say, yes, okay, I accept this thing. And something else that was really important for me at the time when I was 11, 12 years old was that I really was connected to my grandfather. My grandfather was a man of knowledge, and his vocation was literally learning as much as he could. And so throughout his life, he had collected thousands, and I mean thousands of books on everything from religion to psychology to economics to history. Everything he was interested in, I began to become interested in. Now, was that because I was obsessed with him or because that's just who I was? We'll never know. So I asked my grandfather to be my sponsor for my confirmation. You're supposed to find a family member or a friend who's already a confirmed Catholic, and I was really excited, and I really wanted to show him that I cared, that I had put in my research and Christianity made sense to me, and I was going to commit myself to it. And then he died. That was a sad turn. You may or may not have been anticipating that. He passed away, and it was only a few months before my confirmation, and I was legitimately heartbroken. I don't think that what broke my heart so much was the fact that I lost my grandfather, because quite honestly, we had never been that close. I think we had like one conversation together in all of our years of knowing each other. He didn't like kids. But I lost the mentor. I lost the person who would guide me into the depths of myself that I had just begun to feel emerging. And something really beautiful happened that I still remember to this day. There was a talk given at my church. I remember what the priest said. I remember the feeling that came over me, and it was deeply transformational. And basically the priest said this: imagine you're in a room with God. What do? Fall to your knees in prayer? Jump for joy? Do you weep out of pure awe? Imagine now you're in a room with God. How does God react? And he said something so simple. He said, I think God would run to you with open arms, with tears running down his cheeks for love. And this shocked me because, like so many, my image of God had been kind of strict and emotionless and very old and masculine, and I didn't really get love from God. I always thought that I had to bring myself to God's doorstep rather than him knocking on mine. And this changed everything for me. In an instant, I realized that my relationship with the divine didn't have to be completely knowledge-based. It didn't have to be study. I could actually experience divinity, and I could trust that it wanted to exist inside of me just as much as I wanted to coexist with it. So at that moment, I became very Catholic. No, like very Catholic. I was giving all the Italian moms a run for their money. Like, I was for real. Throughout high school, I went back and forth all the time between whether I was going to become a psychologist or be a nun. What I really wanted most deeply was to be a priest. But sexism. I was constantly looking for the divine. I was constantly trying to sense it in my life. And I had some deeply profound religious experiences that you can learn more about above. I wasn't really necessarily traditionally Christian. While Jesus was definitely this archetypal figure I was fascinated by and inspired by, my religion was much more intuitive. It was much more in love with nature, and there's just the essence of what life is. And when I went to college, I began to lose that. I began to become educated in different ways. When I went into the world and I experienced all different types of belief and all different corners of knowledge that I had never experienced before, I just couldn't marry myself to this one way of thinking anymore, and it started to crumble. Losing my faith in Catholicism was one of the most mournful periods of my life. I was constantly grieving, I was constantly confused, and I was lost and felt so immensely alone. I became depressed. This was not a I don't know what to do with myself kind of depression. This was I watched every single episode of Rachel Ray depression. So for all you depressed people out there right now binging daytime TV, I feel ya. It was deep and it was dark, and I just bombarded myself with shallowness to cover up the fact that I had lost my depth. And then a miracle happened. It was my grandfather all those years ago who had first brought me to God, and then it was my grandfather who brought me back. So my grandmother wasn't doing that well, and all the thousands of books in their house had to be dealt with, and so I volunteered to catalog them and to list all the things they had. By the way, my grandmother not only recuperated, she's still alive and kicking, and she's 100. My grandmother's 100 years old. Like, #goals. So after weeks and weeks of this, I came across this tiny little bookshelf, and inside of it were all these books that were mentioning this one thinker that I had heard of before in the work of Joseph Campbell, who was another person my grandfather introduced me to. And I thought, yeah, I'm curious about what this guy has to offer. I'll dig in a little bit. And of course, that thinker was none other than Carl Jung. And the book that I decided to take home was The Undiscovered Self, which I've mentioned several times before on this channel. And if you've been paying attention, you know
I love that book.
But it basically cracked me open for the first time in years. Because in that book was the essence of all these things I'd been struggling with all my life. It recognized the psychological reality of a soul. It spoke about these things that I had always felt to be true. I had always intuitively known and never seen written down on paper before. And after a year probably of studying Jung, I realized studying wasn't enough. I had to do the real thing. And so I went to the Jung Institute in New York City, which is the School of Jungian Studies, and I signed up with a student analyst, which for all you people who are interested in Jungian analysis but cannot afford it because it's expensive, that is a great tip. Check out if there's a school nearby and if they're training their students, and if you can get a hefty discount, because I did, and it was great. And very soon, I realized that I had to tear my life apart and rebuild it from the very beginning. It was heartbreaking work and shattering work and essential work and the most beautiful 2 years of my life. And doing this work, this Jungian work of really going on this path of individuation also opened me to all sorts of other spiritual realities that I was able to reconnect to. And so I dove into everything. I got into Eckhart Tolle, I got into Buddhism, I got into the I Ching, and I read all sorts of self-help books. I even started a blog on spiritual awakening, and it was a beautiful period in my life where I was literally pulling off all these bits of myself that had clouded who I really was, and was able to find these little kernels of truth and beauty that I had always attached to, and I was able to really allow myself to just explore them to my heart's desire. And then, sort of accidentally and wonderfully and synchronistically, I got a tarot reading on a yoga retreat in the woods. And it was literally the most casual thing ever. I don't remember all the cards I got. I think there's like a 4 of Pentacles in there. Yep. The last card is the one I remember, because the last card was the High Priestess. I remember the woman who gave me the reading asked me if I wanted to be a yoga teacher, because she said that the High Priestess was somebody very deeply connected to her intuition, to her spiritual service in the world. And I knew what it was really about, of course. It was something that allowed me to discover God all the time, every day, and do it intentionally and beautifully, and that was what I was called for. And so I enrolled myself in graduate school and bought a deck of cards. And that is the journey I am still on now. I now have many more decks of cards. I have dived so deep into the occult and the philosophies of how to be human, how to live, and I am so grateful for that work. It has been such a meaningful journey to me. It has been the journey I've been called to do since I was 11 years old, and probably younger. I'm like getting emotional. This is real for me. I am sad all the time that I had other dreams that I had to let go, at least for now. But it was so worth it to be able to do the spiritual work I do in the world, to be of service to the divine. And the most beautiful part of this journey has not been rediscovering my soul or, learning a lot about divination or magic. It's been finding the feminine. And that happened only because I did everything that came before. When I went to graduate school, I was studying Western intellectual traditions, which is a really fancy way of saying whatever the hell I wanted. And I wanted to study Jungian stuff. I wanted to study, alchemy and medieval texts and Greek things. But the very first class I ended up taking was on Faust, which is a German play from the 19th century. And I only took that because I knew that Jung liked Faust. And I thought, maybe I'll like Faust too. And then I discovered that this long, long, long play about the patriarchal hero ended with these words, "And the eternal feminine draws us on." I've been sitting with that line for 4 years. It brought me full circle to something that I had known as a kid. God was not just this masculine entity that I had to figure out how to be in relation to. The divine was just as much this other entity, this thing that desired me, that would run to me, that would love me. And that was so clearly to me the feminine side of God, the feminine that had been repressed for thousands of years. And the spiritual work I've been doing ever since I first read that line was to discover what is the feminine, what is the goddess in me, what is this part of me that has been repressed and trampled on and forgotten and pressed down as far as possible. And my work is to find her, to bring her into myself, and to pray that I can bring her into others in the world. And my work as a tarot reader is not only a spiritual exercise in presenting guidance to the world and offering some kind of spiritual service. My work as a tarot reader is also to bring people into the intuitive feminine knowledge and wisdom they already hold inside, because I believe magical work is extremely feminine. It's extremely connected to this repressed side of divinity that is so essential for us to reclaim. This may have gone a little bit heavy. I am a Scorpio, in case you forgot, but I just want to say that the spiritual journey is obviously the most personal thing that you can ever experience in the world. The path of individuation is not ever going to look the same way twice. So if you're starting your journey and you just want some insight on what that might look like, mine is going to look nothing like yours. There might be overlap. You might also like Jung or explore the I Ching, but it's going to be yours. And my best advice to anyone starting this journey is to follow it. Wherever you feel that hint, that pull, that snag, that's where you're meant to go. Go into that place. Be bold, be brave, be open. I appreciate that you sat here with me and listened to my story. If it brought something to your life, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for that. And I would love to hear a little bit about your own stories, because I think talking into a void, makes it not as real as it actually is. So please leave a comment telling me a little bit about what your spiritual experience was like, how you maybe came to the tarot, or how you came to your spiritual essence in whatever way it presents. Please subscribe if you enjoyed this. It means so much to me. And you can go ahead and follow me on Instagram for daily wisdom and witchery and maybe more stories about my life, if you want that for some reason. And I'm wishing you a very happy holiday season, a very peaceful one, extremely safe one. Please be thoughtful as you do your travels and you do your things. Keep your boundaries strong and have a beautiful, meaningful day. That was a little heavier than I thought, but you flow with it.